Must-win game for the South Carolina Gamecocks as they host the Oklahoma Sooners. Take a travel. They're coming off of a rough loss in Red River. Both teams trying to get back on track and back to their winning ways. These are our previews and predictions for South Carolina and Oklahoma. Hello, everyone. I'm Lucas Hill here of South Carolina Live here at the Voice of College Football. Everybody do us a favor. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live here on South Carolina Live at the Voice of College Football. Pleasure always talking with our good buddy Josh Mahler over at Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football, also at OU Insider. Just talking some Oklahoma and what we are going to expect this weekend. Josh, good to see you, man. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, you said it's a must-win for South Carolina, but it really feels like a must-win for Oklahoma, too. I mean, if you don't win this one, you're starting to really spiral.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the spiral thing, which is what I want to kind of kick off on. For the South Carolina side of things, you are spiraling out of control after starting 2-0. Really, you started spiraling out of control the first game of the season because offensively, you're garbage. There is no other term that I can lighten to describe this South Carolina offense. And I have been very vocal about what you need to do about opening up this offense and what you're going to have to do this weekend going up against what, in my opinion, is probably the best front four that you're going to face all year. And I know you just played a good one that LSU has this season. You're still having to play Texas A&M. You still got to play Ole Miss. But right now, with talent and depth-wise, Oklahoma, from head to toe, the best that you have all day. What are you expecting from this defensive line that got after Arch Manning a little bit on Saturday, but obviously still had their struggles defensively?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely didn't do, their best on defense. It was, I forget who said it. Somebody said it in a press conference this week, but a lot of people had their worst game and nobody had a good game. And that's exactly what happened on defense, too. A lot of guys just had a bad game. And it ultimately, like you said, they did get back there and pressure Arch a lot. They weren't able to get him down more than once, I believe. They had plenty of tackles for a loss, but, a lot of that was just kind of the run game, obviously, which was struggling for Texas. So I think the main thing, I'm not too worried about this defense. When you don't have an offense complementing this defense, it's going to turn into what we saw in 2024 for the Sooners. So I think ultimately I'm not too concerned about the defense. I think they'll do just fine for the front for the guys on the front. That's the one that Oklahoma fans have the most confidence in. You're going to be able to get back there. The main thing I think is not getting your edge guys too deep to allow wide open gaps for Lenora Sellers, because if he's able to use his legs, he can be dangerous. He hasn't really been able to use them lately, but you have to make sure that that's not a threat in this game for sure.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple times when I watched the film earlier this week. Is just over pursuing at times, getting outside of your rush lanes, and that gave Arch Manning, that gave even guys like Jackson Arnold room to run, even though Jackson Arnold didn't take those opportunities. But for a guy like Arch that took those opportunities, he took advantage of it and pretty much defined what the rest of that game was. I thought first half, for the first 2.5, 3 quarters, I thought you were consistent. I thought you were dominant. But as the game went on in the fourth quarter, Texas goes on these long drives. You start to see your mistakes. You start to see your missed tackles. You start to see this front four kind of get pushed around a little bit, especially in the last 2 drives in the fourth quarter. Is this an issue of just conditioning? Is it just wearing down over time? Like, what did you see last week that kind of struck to you, especially in that second half?
It was ultimately just no fire. You didn't see it from the beginning, and you saw it from Texas. In rivalry games, that's the most telling thing for me. And it felt like Oklahoma didn't take Texas seriously this year. They came out there, nobody had fire in their step. Nobody was – people come at me on social media and say, oh, they jawed before the game. Before the game antics don't really equate to what happened on the field. What happened on the field was guys weren't exploding off the ball. You had linebackers not really plugging their gaps, not really fighting through blocks. Even the defensive line didn't really fight through blocks and get around guys. Now, you can try to scream that there was holding here and there or whatever. I mean, that happens on every play. I am on the stance that if holding happens every play, the referees need to call it every play. But it does happen every play on both sides of the ball. So I don't really like that excuse. It just ultimately just didn't feel like anybody had that fire in their step, that they were actually playing the biggest game of the season. And it really was, because you have to win that Texas game. And especially as the Oklahoma Sooners, and when you're a favorite going into that game, it was just, a lack of enthusiasm. And from obviously on the offensive side of the ball, I know we haven't really talked about that. They didn't help the defense by putting them on the field so often with 3 interceptions. And then of course, you allow Texas to run the clock and have the time of possession. You're just not going to win that game.
Doesn't help either, like you mentioned, with the 3 interceptions, that they're working with the short field as well, especially with them bringing the momentum. Glad you mentioned the offensive side of the ball. So talking about South Carolina, obviously Chris Mahler told you yesterday, I hope, Lonnie Teasley, gone. Now you bring in Sean Elliott as your new O-line coach. Does South Carolina. I am not expecting a night and day difference in this offensive line. You still have personnel issues. Josh, 9 of the 12 games that you have played, you have had to make a change on the offensive line. You cannot have that, especially this deep in SEC play. This is where things start to really ramp up for this offensive line that is pretty much sucked in run fits. You've gotten confused on pass plays. You're going to get your quarterback killed. And I think that's something that what Brent Venables does. I love the way he develops these little stunts, these little twist motions. What you get on the edge is what you're going to get from a Venables type defense. Like you mentioned already, there was no fire, but I feel like the fire comes back this week on the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about the offensive side of the ball for Oklahoma. Talked about John Mateer. He's hurt, and I think it's very obvious. I still don't think he's healthy. And in my personal opinion, if you get out to an early lead, I don't think you should play him the entire game. So if I was Ben Arbuckle in this system, I'm installing quick games, screens, 2-step, 3-step drop backs, getting the football out of John Mateer's hands as quick as you possibly can. What have you seen from the press conferences throughout this week with Oklahoma? What are you expecting to see from the offensive side of the ball that you maybe didn't see last week?
Yeah, I saw some offensive players, and then even Ben Arbuckle himself kind of pissed off with the way that they performed, rightfully so. And John Mateer more than ever. I think the reason why Oklahoma fans rally around him, even with a bad game, is like, hey, he's not out here giving excuses. He's not out here bummed that he didn't, throw the ball better, that he didn't see the guys. He gives the reasons why he didn't perform well, and he says, hey, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I need to be better. And he doesn't blame the injury at all, because he's the one saying, I'm good to go. So he can't use that as an excuse. And I think that's what Oklahoma fans like about him, because even if the injury is still bothering him, he's not saying, I probably should have given myself a little bit more of a rest, but I may have jumped into it just a little too early. Instead, he's just coming out here and he's saying, no, it's the thumb's not bothering me. It's me. And really, in a lot of that last week, I do think the thumb was bothering him to some extent. I think the interception right there before halftime felt like one that might have drifted away from him uncharacteristically. And so kind of drifted over into the defender's hands. That one felt to me like it was probably the thumb, because it was just an off throw. And that's not what John Mateer gives you. And, but other ones like, there was one, I believe, somewhere in the first half, there was another one that he ended up throwing it over into coverage, and he gives a pump fake. I think that was his first interception, and he gives a pump fake to set the defender up. And Isaiah Satania is wide open on the left side of the field. That is not the thumb. That's just him not making the right reads. And I think there was a big confidence issue with him going into that game. I know I was telling you before we started recording that he didn't practice full practice all week. Why are you throwing the guy in if he hasn't full practiced? So, and Brent Venables even said that earlier on in the week when they were trying to keep it hush-hush whether he was going to play or not. Like, he didn't play with the ones. You usually got to play good on good in order to play, right? And yeah, you do. And otherwise, that's what happens. But hindsight's 2020. He shouldn't have played, most likely. But I don't know if Oklahoma really wins with Michael Hawkins. I don't know. They just didn't perform well really all over. But hopefully John Mateer is a little bit better. Hopefully this full week of practice kind of helps him get right mentally too.
Part of me believes they didn't start Mike Hawkins last week because of how he performed in the Kent State game. Underwhelming against a Kent State program that's probably the worst in college football. Wasn't efficient, could have been better, but I think ultimately you still got to give the kid a little bit of an opportunity. I know that because throughout practice you're playing with your ones. You have, I think, 2 periods of that, and I think throughout, once you get done with that and go through team period, endos, inside runs and stuff, and that's when you get to scout team. That's when you'll have that for like 2 or 3 periods. I don't know what the practice schedule looked like for Oklahoma. I'm not in there. Obviously, there was a lot of talk in that, which kind of confused me in a sense, but I'm not Ben Arbuckle. I'm not making that decision. I understand why you want to throw him out there. And look, I commend John Mateer for going out there and how he's been acting in these press conferences. The dude's a baller, and the dude has pretty much balls of steel for going out there and playing in that football game. He could have gone out of the game. But again, like I told you off camera, I really think that the right decision could have been just to give Mike Hawkins a chance. Even if he kind of struggles, give him an opportunity. That's all that you need to know, because you still got a long season ahead of you. I understand it's Texas. I understand it's Red River. You have a whole season to play for, and you have so much more that's in front of you right now.
Yeah, I think letting him go out there and play when he says he's fine, the medical staff clears him, the coaching staff feels like he's ready enough in practice. I totally understand throwing him out there and having him go start the game. I think when you come out in the third quarter, you end the third quarter down, I believe 13-6 at that time, where you were going into the halftime up 6-3, should have been 9-3 at least. That's just by saying that you didn't throw the interception and kick the field goal instead. That's not to say that you don't maybe run a few things differently in that first half or not throw the interception, whatever, holding penalties that seemed like they just kept on being an Achilles heel to this offense last week. But ultimately, I think when you go into the fourth quarter and you're down, that to me was, all right, we completely botched that third quarter. And a big part of it was John Mateer, and he just wasn't himself. You don't pull him the way that you pulled Jackson Arnold last year and expect it to be a long-term thing, but you do pull him and say, hey, it's just not your day. It's good. Rest. We're losing this game right now, and we don't need you to go out there and play hero ball and get yourself hurt again. So let's just see what we can do with Michael Hawkins in there in the fourth quarter. And maybe that would have been the right move. Maybe it wasn't. Again, it's a lot of what ifs at this point, but I do think he's better this week. I think he's ready to go this week. And by his standards, he's 100% ready to go for sure.
What are you expecting to see from Oklahoma's offense this week?
I mean, I'm expecting you attack the run game with Torrey Blaylock, Xavier Robinson. If Javonte Barnes is good to go, you get those guys going. Jaden Ott is just, I think everybody's just kind of admitted he's a liability on the field. It's not the same Jaden Ott that transferred into Oklahoma. It's not the same Jaden Ott that had a 1,300-yard season. And so I don't know what to make of him anymore. He showed a little bit of glimmer of hope against Kent State, but I think you attack the run because you can against South Carolina. And if it's not working, obviously you still got the backup. Either that or just switch to a full air raid offense. Stop trying to pretend like you're trying not to be air raid, and just go all air raid. Go all out. If you're going to do it, then just do it.
I get the air raid part, but I mean, what Ben Arbuckle's offense has been about, and we talked about this in the preseason. You've had guys like Cam Ward in the building. You got to be balanced. You've got to mix in with guys like Troy Blaylock, who's the run game for Oklahoma been underwhelming this year. Jaden Ott was the guy that I thought was going to do wonders this year. I had in the preseason as a guy that could be a Doak Walker Award winner. Here's a guy who's coming off an injury 2 years ago, was a 1,000-yard back, could have been the number one back taken in 24 or 25. And then you get to Oklahoma and he's just being buried on the depth chart. I don't know if is it injury-wise or is it just performance-wise? Because I know Arbuckle said in the presser that it was performance, but I don't know if or was it a leg injury that was kind of sidelining him for a little bit?
originally, and then this season it was his shoulder. So I mean, it's been performance for sure. It's obvious at this point. He's not performing well, and he's not giving his best in practice, and that's been made clear now. And yeah, I look at what he should be and where he's at. He doesn't pass block well, and he seems kind of weak on pass blocking. And I know that a lot of fans want to use that. There's one play where Deion Burks was sweeping outside, should have kept on going outside. He should have gone around his blocker, but Jaden Knott still doesn't even try to make any kind of contact there on that play. So it is kind of a little bit of both. But yeah, and I mean, he just hasn't been it. And the reason why I say you just switch up and go full air raid, because I agree with you, you have to have a balanced offense, but Oklahoma doesn't have a balanced offense. There is nothing balanced about this offense. They can't run the ball. The best running game that they had was early in the season when they were able to run John Mateer and he was able to fight forward, but you don't want to do that with your star quarterback, who also is now coming off of kind of having a banged up thumb. And so I think that's the reason why I say that if you're gonna struggle this bad in the run game and not even really give it a chance to break free, then just do away with it and go full air raid.
Josh Mahler of Oklahoma, the voice of college football, joining us. Want to thank our good friends real fast over at Underdog Fantasy. Going over to underdogfantasy.com, use my promo code VOCFBSC, and when you play your first $5 lineup, you will get $50 instantly in free bets. That's VOCFBSC, and play that first $5 lineup and get $50 instantly in free bets. Must be 21 or older, not available in all states. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That is 1-800-GAMBLER. Oklahoma. Okay, so I wanted to briefly touch on Oklahoma's offensive line, which I thought made leaps and bounds this year. You've seen how good that they can be. Gave up 5 sacks, though, last week. Going up against the South Carolina front four that had their moments the last couple of weeks. Dylan Stewart starting to come into his own. Brian Thomas has been an elite edge rusher. What are you expecting to see as an improvement standpoint from that Oklahoma offensive line this Saturday?
Yeah, the offensive line is definitely better than last year. It's still banged up. It's not quite as banged up as they were last year, but it's still banged up. You're kind of short on that offensive tackle spot right now, but ultimately they've been really good in pass blocking, and that's what just doesn't make any sense about this offensive line is they can pass block just fine, but then the run blocking is just not there. And so, yeah, I think the one thing with South Carolina is I think they've been really shaky on the interior of their defensive line. I think that's where you attack it. And hopefully, I mean, I don't think you really have to push as hard against South Carolina, but I was talking to Chris Marler last night about this. I feel like Oklahoma just has to do what we saw from Texas and just explode off the ball and hit somebody. Stop trying to do any kind of blocking schemes or anything like that. Just elementary. Go back to elementary. Pass blocking has been fine, so keep on doing what you're doing there. But as far as run blocking, that's really where they've struggled. And so hopefully we see some improvement this week. If you see some improvement, that gives Oklahoma fans a little bit more of a confidence in this team kind of moving forward.
Line sitting at 7.5 on the side of Oklahoma. You covering that, or we having South Carolina kind of have an opportunity to cover the spread?
It's hard because I think this is a must-win for both teams, and so I could see this being a really close game. My gut feeling is saying I take Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's defense has just been better. I think the offense just wasn't itself last week, and so if they can get themselves right, I think Oklahoma covers this. I do think it's going to be, I mean, regardless of what you see on the schedule and what you see as the points total all season, I think you just hit the under for Oklahoma. I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game, maybe like a 24-13 kind of game, maybe. I think it's going to be really low-scoring. I know that I've seen some struggles from South Carolina's offense, and I think this defense
really?
is, like you said, I think it's one of the best defenses that they're facing, and it's still one of the best defenses in the nation. So I think they're going to be just fine. Excuse me, but ultimately, I trust in this defense. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I'm going to take Oklahoma. I think they cover just because the defense keeps it that low scoring for South Carolina.
Yeah, me too. I'm being as real as I can about this program. And South Carolina at this point in time, athletic-wise, it's not just football. Athletics over the last 10 to 15 years has been mediocre at best. You've had a couple great seasons. Men's basketball goes on a Final Four run. Women's basketball has been elite for the last couple of couple of years. Baseball has had their moments. You win two World Series at the beginning of the 2010s. But I mean, ever since then, you're in a state of mediocrity athletic-wise. And with a new athletic director at the helm in Jeremiah Dante, hopefully you start to see some changes, man. But I mean, as of right now, I'm not sold on South Carolina on football-wise. I would not be surprised if they end up finishing the year at 5-7. If they do win, though, puts them back in the driver's seat for a potential shot at a bowl appearance. Definitely one to look out for. Josh Mahler of Oklahoma Live at the Voice of College Football. Also check his workout over at OU Insider. Josh, always a pleasure, my man. Have a great rest of the week, and we will see you very soon.
All right, thank you.